Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Billings Dynasty as we are going to chop up this off-season and the preseason for this year. We're going to be looking at the players that are leaving. We've got a good chunk of key contributors that are leaving, especially E.J. Buckley, who is going to be projected as a first-rounder in this upcoming NFL draft. But we will be losing a good chunk of our key starters here for us, especially on the offensive end. We got 3 out of the 5 of our offensive line starters, as well as some key contributors to the outside linebacker core, and especially Jamal McBride. He was an unsung hero for us, even with his 64 overall play from him. So we will be missing a good chunk of players. E.J. Buckley did, in fact, go in the first round of the NFL draft for him, so that does help with our pro potential. So now we're looking at grabbing Harvey Jordan here at the end of the season. He's the only guy we've got left. I would imagine that we'd be going and signing him, and we do. We blow out Boise State on that one. They're going to be coming up into the Mountain West this year. That's going to be somebody that we will be facing in this upcoming year because they won the Conference USA Conference Championship game, meaning that they will be moving up with us. So in terms of recruiting for this year, we are losing, as I've said, in the players leaving, we are losing a good chunk of players from our starters, especially on the offensive end. And we are probably not going to be replacing very many of them, unfortunately for us. That is going to be the biggest downside for this offseason. We've got 3 out of the 5 offensive linemen that we're losing. We're losing E.J. Buckley. We do have Jaron Walter and Dwayne Novak. They should slot in nicely. But our wide receiver core was already struggling big time, and we're only losing just our best wide receiver from this last year. We should hopefully have Corey Young, our JUCO transfer, coming in this year. He should make a big difference and should come in as probably our best wide receiver coming into this year, which really tells you how bad our wide receiver core really is. Defensive end, we are keeping a good chunk of our defensive players this year. But the biggest downside for us this season is that we are losing a good chunk of our depth guys who were good enough to really come in and help us out when we needed to, when we had stamina issues or anything else like that. And this new recruiting class, our linebacker recruiting class, should slot in nicely to replace them for this year. So looking at all of the top recruits that we had this year and showing you where they went, obviously a good chunk of them are going to those tier 1 schools. So that is one of those big deal things for us. But a good chunk of them also, some of these bottom ones are going to tier 2 schools like Claude White, we are going to see him this year and for the next couple years as he is going to Cal. And Makoa Pika O'Shea, that is a big pickup for Farmington, for them grabbing the number 1 quarterback recruit for them. That should help them pretty nicely now that they are now in tier 1. But looking at what we've got coming up against us in tier 2 for this year, some of the biggest teams that I would definitely worry about coming into this next year in tier 2 with the Mountain West schedule is this Boise State team. They are coming from tier 3. I don't think that they're going to be as good as they once were, but coming up into tier 2, it's really difficult to say how good they're going to be. And they're adding 3 4-stars to their roster. Another team that I am definitely a little bit worried about is Fresno State with their 4 4-stars, especially the 3 wide receivers. They already had good wide receivers, and they're only going to be stronger which is going to make things really difficult. And then on top of all of that, we're looking at really making sure that we're paying attention to what Cal does with Claude White as the athlete. Be very curious to see where he is going to end up for them on that team. But that is going to just about wrap up everything for this recruiting offseason, as we are now going to be looking at these specialists here in this offseason and moving on into position changes. So looking at us, Joe Paris already being one of the best players on our team, which is awesome to see. We're going to be looking at moving Chaz Hall, one of our new JUCO transfers, to the center position. So that's going to be a position where he is not going to be sitting behind one of our players at right guard, and is going to go start at center right away, and then next year replace that right guard for his senior year. One of the biggest ones that we're going to be looking at here is what is Carlos Lee going to be doing? He looks good enough to be a wide receiver, or he's fast enough to fit into our running back scheme. The elusiveness really isn't there that we're looking at. He's got the carrying to hold on to the ball, but those coverages really catch my eye for him. They really do. Good at running, at being a halfback, good at being a wide receiver, but he's either going to be a wide receiver or a corner, really realistically, because our strong safeties and our free safeties, they're all looking really good, but we really need the help in this corner position. Looking at the man coverage that we've got right now and the zone coverages that we have, they're just not even close to on par with what Carlos Lee has. But at the same time, our wide receiver room is incredibly weak, and our halfback room is pretty light, so you could see Carlos Lee really moving into that spot. But ultimately, I think that we are really going to try and utilize his athleticism, his 4-star athleticism, into the cornerback position and slot him into that role, because that is something that we really need to work on this season. So now we're moving into the fun part of this offseason, into the training results. So this is a big deal for us. Looking at Timothy Strickland, he is a quarterback that could have been fighting for the starting position spot last year, because he is fast and he can throw the ball just as good as pretty much anybody else on our team. It'll be very interesting to see what happens, because we had a very good finish in the year with McDaniel. So it'll be really interesting to see what this redshirt freshman does in the offseason. We will be seeing them go head-to-head in spring ball and see what is going on. And right there, Corey Young, already going to be one of the key guys that we are looking at. We already benched Antoine Foreman once already in the last season. So it's just going to be a really difficult time. Probably going to be sending Brady Ferguson into the offense, into that wide receiver spots. We're going to be mixing up our formations this year. We're still going to be running with 3 wide receiver and 2 running back prominent offense, but we're going to include some tight end positions to really involve Brady Ferguson, because he's honestly the best wide receiver we have on the team, and he's a tight end. So we're going to be trying and continuing his good form into this next year. Looking at the defense here, we are going to be returning a good chunk of our starters from last year, especially on the defensive line, and we're really only losing that. So our front 6, because we're running a 3-3-5 Okie formation, our front 6, we're only losing 1 guy, and that's our right outside linebacker. He will be missed. We're going to probably be starting one of our freshmen in his place, or one of our JUCO transfers. So we will see what happens. One of the biggest holdups that we had last year is trying to be able to stop the pass, and that is something that we have struggled with for a very long time. We didn't necessarily fill a lot of those holes, Hopefully our corners can get a little bit better. I think that speed on the outside linebacker position is going to be really helpful coming into this next year. Dallas DeLoach obviously is going to be really good. Sophomore redshirt, already a 95 overall. Definitely the leader of the defense. And looking at, Terrence Brothers is going to be your starter. We've got Vince Riley, and then it's a really big drop-off between those two. You're really going to be relying on them, which is all right because we don't necessarily use a lot of three-corner formations with our 3-3-5, kind of more of a strong safety position. But the improvement that we needed out of our corners is not necessarily there. We did get a little bit of improvement, which is always welcome, but we're going to probably still struggle a little bit. Hopefully Carlos Lee can maybe see some time on the field. So we'll see how that goes. Pierre Fawerda, hopefully he's going to get good. Joe Paris is going to be taking over and becoming a starter automatically. It's just going to be determining, is he going to be in the back or is he going to be up on the line and guarding all the Mountain West wide receivers that we are going to have to go up against. And Demetrius Mathis, hopefully that leg gets a little bit stronger. So now we're going to be looking in on the BCS tie-ins that we are going to be looking at. We've moved the teams around in their conferences with this conference, customized conferences and BCS Bowl tie-ins this week for the offseason, and then we'll advance into that preseason. So here are all of the BCS Bowl tie-ins for this year with the Tier 1 schools going up against each other and the Tier 2 schools going up against each other as well. So now we're into the preseason and we will be looking at redshirting our new freshmen. One thing I like to do in a lot of my dynasties, and I will probably be continuing on into these dynasties, is I don't like redshirting anybody that is not a freshman, or if they are a freshman or a JUCO, they need to have if they have a shot at seeing the field, then I won't redshirt them. I'm not just redshirting guys just because I'm being a bit more realistic, as I like to do. If they have a shot at playing, they're going to play. If they're not going to play, then I'll redshirt them. That's just how I feel is a bit more realistic. So that is how we are looking. So now we can kind of see where the positions kind of rank out a little bit. So we're going to be looking at, especially now looking at the depth chart, we're really going to be looking at this offensive starter at the quarterback. So we're going to really try and figure out if we are going to be playing with Jamal McDaniel, who led us last year with the 2 wins that we had last year and really played a role once Deion Graves really showed that he didn't have the ability to really lead us to wins. We like to turn the ball over a lot, and McDaniel really came in, especially after Jarvis Kinnery really turned the ball over. He came in and was just really sure and was really good at what we needed him to do. So we're kind of going through a little bit of the spring here. We're going really quick. Each quarterback is going to have a shot at leading drives. They each got 3 drives to lead, and then the next one came up. All of these plays are from the same formation, and they're all going to be randomly selected, as well as the defense. Those plays are all randomly selected from everything, so it's whatever the coach wants to throw in there for them to do. So that's what the quarterback had to be able to work with. So we've got Jamal McDaniel up first, and his first 2 drives have not been very good at all. And we're really just looking to see who can really lead the offense with this new offensive line, since we lost 3 of our starters, and just to see what we can do. McDaniel, this 3rd drive is working out a little bit better, kind of working the ball around a little bit more, seeing a bit more of the field, which is pretty typical of what he did last year. We had slow starts and then really just kind of methodically worked our way. The only game that we really just dominated from the get-go was that San Diego State game last year. that really sealed us staying up into tier 2, which was awesome for us to be able to do. McDaniel really just kind of found his groove. That's something that we're going to see too much of. I'm afraid that we might see a lot of the dropped passes. It's going to really derail a lot of stuff. Our wide receiver room is going to be really tough. So now we're going to be moving on to Timothy Strickland, our redshirt freshman who's been sitting back waiting. He is going to be a lefty, which is going to throw a little bit of a wrinkle into our offense. But his speed, you can already kind of tell he's way faster, definitely shorter than McDaniel. McDaniel is massive. Look at that. That is fast. That's Kinnery fast, and that might be even faster than Kinnery when all said is done. So Strickland kind of moving the ball around pretty well right now. Corey Young, look at him go. He's got the speed. That is something that we have needed in a long time, is just a little bit of speed for us. But wide receivers, other than Corey Young, nobody really else is all that fast to get open. Our corners are really showing like we are being able to stop anything right now for us. So Strickland still in that first drive, still moving the ball pretty well. He's just kind of really leading the offense right now, showing really good decision making. Every once in a while, his freshman comes out of him and just kind of working the way through. So see if Strickland can get this ball into the end zone, and that is going to be wide open for Dwayne Novak on that one for the touchdown. So now we're going to move on to drive 2 for Timothy Strickland. He has already got a touchdown on his first drive, as McDaniel only had his 1 touchdown on his 3 drives, with 2 turnovers on down really quickly for him. Not a great showing right now for Jamal McDaniel. So we will be kind of seeing, it's one of the things that is just making this decision extra hard is that McDaniel really led us and got comfortable throwing the ball with him. And this is a completely new person that we have to deal with. He is faster. He doesn't have the accuracy like McDaniel does, which is something that I've really enjoyed with McDaniel. But the other side of McDaniel is that he can't really throw the ball deep all that much. And Timothy Strickland, he is just has the ability to just like make plays. Like, look at that. Like, his speed really is a wrinkle in the offense, which is going to be really difficult. If he's going to be the starter, that is going to have to be something that the opposing team really has to deal with, which they haven't had to deal with us ever, because I mean, McDaniel is not fast and he cannot hold on to the ball, is what we have learned with him. So it's just a matter of trying to be able to see what's going to happen. And that's going to be another touchdown for Timothy Strickland on that one. So those drives took a good chunk of time. So we are going to skip his 3rd drive, and now we're going to see if Demetrius Mathis has improved his leg strength at all. Kind of messing around in practice just to see what kind of distance that he's got going for us. Kind of playing around with trying to make things a bit more difficult for field goals, to see if we can get a bit more chaos with field goals, so that it's not just in every single time, because field goals can be pretty easy in the game. So we're going to include Carlos Lee. So looking at the depth chart, we're going to include Carlos Lee as a backup option in that wide receiver spot. Foreman is just a slightly better than Carlos Lee out there. So we're going to just kind of sit back there and let him do his thing and really just focus on that defensive side of the ball, because that, like I said, that is the side that we need the most help with his athleticism, is in that secondary. Our secondary has been pretty weak. Michael Hall, our JUCO sophomore, is going to be taking the role of our last outside linebacker that just really dominated. So now we're going to really try to determine if it's going to be Joe Paris or Pierre Fawerda. That's going to be our safety that's on the line up against the slot wide receiver or against Joe Paris. And Joe Paris is probably going to be taking that outside spot. We're going to be returning Terrence Brothers, which is fantastic for us on the receiving, on the kick returns and punt returns. He was flashy when he had the opportunities. So looking at our quarterback decision, it's going to be tough. We've got Jamal McDaniel right now slotted at the starter, but I'm still not totally sure if Timothy Strickland's going to take that spot. They both have their pluses and their minuses. It's going to be really difficult to try and figure out what we are going to do. So now we're going to approach the recruiting here into this part of the preseason. These are our team needs that we're going to be having this year. We're definitely going to need depth a lot. So it's important for us to hit on these recruits. And this is the bad news for us, is that we dropped down a prestige level and are now only a 1-star. So what that means for us with these new rules that we're going to have with being a 1-star is we still get to recruit within that region with Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. But outside of our home state and our pipeline state, we can only get one guy from each of the states that we have. In our home state and our pipeline state, we can get 2 guys and 1 guy from each one of those states. That is better than our recruiting level. So we are in a tough spot for this year. All the other states, we can only get 1 guy, and they're all 1-stars. So this is what our board is going to end up looking like for us with those new recruiting restrictions. We are only going to have 10 guys on our board, and it is going to be really tough. It's tough losing prestige points, but that is kind of realistic to life. If you are not a good team seeing time, you're not going to be seeing a lot of the time on the recruiting side. Not a lot of guys are going to want you. So now looking at our schedule, we're going to face off against a tier 3 opponent in Utah State and a tier 2 and a tier 3. So we're going to go at Kentucky, and then we're going to go with North Texas in our tier 3 opponent. So we've got 2 tier 3s. We're going to try, we're just not going to be as good as we were last year. So we're going to really just kind of see what we're going to do this season with them. So we're going to be going up against North Texas, who's from the central region. Utah State, again, trying to get a bit of revenge from that overtime loss, terrible overtime loss. And then we're going to be facing off against another tier 2 school to kind of see where we're at the tier 2 level. We're going to be facing off against a team that should be pretty good in Kentucky, and we're going to go to their house in that one. So we're going to go ahead and start this season, and we're going to be looking ahead at all the preseason rankings, all of the conference preseason selections, as well as some All-Americans that we've got for the year coming up on this. So the conference preseason rankings are all just based off of where the computer thinks they're going to finish based off of where their preseason ranking is going to be. So I know that I talked about just barely that we're not going to be as good as we were last year. I know that I say that, and that's really kind of a scary position for us to really be in this year, because we barely survived in tier 2 last year. We were on the chopping block the entire year and absolutely had everything had to go right for us in order for us to stay up in tier 2, and it did. And that is what is really crazy about what happened last season. We were in a lot of games and we competed well in them, and we just didn't come away with certain wins, like our San Jose State game last year and the Cal game. And then there are other games where we just got absolutely obliterated in, like the Fresno State game. And then we go and win against Air Force. That was a close one. But then we go and blow out San Diego State. So it's really shocking and something that kind of makes me a bit nervous about this upcoming season. I think that with the starters that we have, we are still returning a good chunk of our starters for the year. We've got most of our wide receivers. We've got Sheldon Carey coming back. Antoine Foreman, he is back. Yeah, we benched him, but he's still somebody that was with us last year. Corey Young, our JUCO junior, should provide good enough support for us. We've got Carlos Lee that can come in. We have Brady Ferguson, our tight end. He's really good. We've got our interior core linemen that we have. Yeah, we're returning a good chunk of them, but we still have Timmy Woods, Zach Poe. He's going to be trying to fill in that spot from last year. And we've got McCray coming in from last year as well. We've got senior Layden offensive line, so we should have something there. Jaron Walters coming back. Dwayne Novak's got speed. He can survive for us. So our offense is looking pretty okay. Yeah, don't have the greatest offensive line or whatever, projected to finish last in the Mountain West, as we just saw there. Our offensive line is pretty much our weakest point of our offense. So hopefully we do a little bit better than that, I would hope. And then looking at our defense, we are going to be returning basically our whole defense. We've got our whole offensive line is returning. We got Marquise Owens, we got Dallas DeLoach that's going to be returning. We're going to bring in a JUCO sophomore, Michael Hall, to go and replace the right outside linebacker from last year. We've got Herbert Noel coming in, staying there at that free safety position. Pierre Fawerda is still going to be with us. He's going to really slot in as our strong safety number 2. Joe Paris, our 4-star from home state kid from Montana. Hopefully he shows out. He shows like he's got the athleticism to really dominate for us. So I think that we could be doing all right as we are now looking at the All-Americans for this year. Most of them being from those Tier 1 conferences, which is exactly what you would think. We've got a couple surprises in there. We've got a couple Tier 2s in here. We've got Tier 4s with Billows Falls and Dallas DeLoach. He's going to take a spot in that middle linebacker first team All-American, which is awesome for us to see. But yeah, we've got a couple Tier 4s, a couple Tier 3s, mostly Tier 1s though, especially on this second team. So looking at us this next year, our defense, we're really going to ride our defense because we're returning basically everybody. We have got 8 guys that we're returning. If you want to count Vince Riley as a returner, you could count him as a returner. That would make 8 guys returning for us. And then we've got Carlos Lee, one of our athletes, our 4-star athletes coming out. So we have chances. We're like I said, we're probably going to really rely on our defense to really kick it in gear for us, because our offense, we're losing a bunch, but at the same time, like I said, we are still bringing in some pretty good stuff for us. Jaron Walter, our offense is set up perfectly for us this year. And like I said, we're going to be trying out a couple new formations this year with our offense to try and liven it up a little bit and be just a little bit different. You know what I'm saying? We didn't really utilize Brady Ferguson. I didn't realize what a big player Brady Ferguson really is until later in the season. So we're going to be adding in a couple of tight end positions that are really going to try and help us out. We're going to add a bunch formation. We're going to add a bunch, not the bunch formation. We're going to add that in. to try and really just kind of confuse the defense a little bit, try and make things a little bit more difficult for them, because we are mostly running out of that split offset and the normal formation, to try and utilize the tight end and then our double running back offense, which I think we're going to be pretty well. Dwayne Novak in our spring session, he really surprised me. For a 74 overall running back, he definitely doesn't look like a 74 overall running back. So he's going to really come into his own on this year. So hopefully we can see just a little bit of offense. We just need to really decide on who's going to be that starter. If it's going to be Jamal McDaniel running it back, or if it's going to be Timothy Strickland, our redshirt freshman, coming in for the year. Because Jarvis Kinnery, I mean, as much as we really want him to be in the running, he's just not. He doesn't have the accuracy. In all of his games, he just tends to throw the ball to the other team, and that's just something that we can't really handle. So not exactly sure what's going to happen on this first week of the season, and kind of playing our card, holding up our cards a little bit so that other teams don't. So Utah State doesn't know what's going to happen this next year when we play them first. Because if we can get wins in this non-conference season, that would be awesome. We need to try and stack on wins because we need to get that prestige point. Having one prestige is no good for recruiting, as we can see with only 10 guys on our recruiting board. So that is going to do it for this offseason. Our week 1 is going to be coming up. Thank you for your patience. Ran into allergies and a lot of other issues. So I'm really excited about this season. I think that we've got a lot that we can do with this team, and hopefully this defense rides us to victory. Subscribe if you like, and we will see you next time.